Admiral Una Park stood very still as the massive doors opened before her. She had spent 20 years in the military. She had commanded ships through asteroid fields and solar storms. She had buried friends and made impossible decisions. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The council chamber of Nexus Prime was the largest room she had ever seen. It stretched upward like the inside of a mountain, with seats carved into the walls at different heights. Each section held a different species, and each species looked down at the small group of humans standing on the floor below. Una felt their eyes on her. Some of those eyes were not really eyes at all. The Velthari had glowing crystals where their faces should be. The Moradi were long and snake-like, swimming through special tubes filled with freezing liquid. The Dren were giants, each one standing 3 meters tall with skin like gray stone. 12 species. 12 ancient civilizations. And then there were the humans, standing in the center like children who had wandered into a room full of adults. A voice echoed through the chamber. It came from the highest seat, where a Velthari sat on a throne of purple crystal. This was High Arbiter Volmek, the leader of the Galactic Compact. "You are the representatives of Earth?" Volmek asked. His voice was cold and musical at the same time, like wind blowing through glass tubes. Una stepped forward. "I am Admiral Una Park. I speak for the United Earth Government. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade with the Compact." A sound moved through the chamber. It took Una a moment to realize it was laughter. Different species laughed in different ways. The Dren made deep rumbling sounds. The Moradi hissed. The Velthari chimed like breaking ice. "Friendship," Volmek repeated. "And what does humanity offer in return for this friendship?" Una had prepared for this question. "We offer our knowledge, our culture, our willingness to learn and work alongside you. We offer our determination and our creativity." "Determination," said another voice. This one came from a Moradi counselor named Thrain, who floated in his tube like a silver ribbon. "A species that lives for less than 100 years speaks to us of determination. One have been on this council for 600 years. My grandfather served for 1,000 before me. What can you possibly determine in your brief flicker of existence?" Una felt her face grow hot, but she kept her voice calm. "Our short lives teach us to value every moment. We do not waste time." "You do not have time to waste," Volmek said. "That is not a virtue. It is a tragedy." He leaned forward on his throne. "Let me explain something to you, Admiral. The youngest species in this compact has been traveling between stars for 50,000 years. We have mapped every corner of this galaxy. We have built civilizations that will last until the stars themselves grow dark. And what has humanity done?" He waved one crystalline hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed Earth, small and blue and terribly fragile. "You have been in space for less than 1,000 years. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. Your bodies are soft and break easily. You cannot survive in temperatures below freezing or above 40 degrees. You cannot breathe in water or in the vacuum of space. You require constant food, constant water, constant sleep." The hologram changed, showing a human body with red marks, highlighting all the ways it could fail. "Your bones shatter under 3 times your normal gravity. Your skin burns under radiation that my kind finds pleasant. A single bacterium can kill you. A fall from a small height can end your life." Volmek sat back. "You are, without question, the weakest intelligent species we have ever encountered." Una's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her legs to hide it. Behind her, she could hear the quick breathing of her crew. They were afraid. They were angry. They were ashamed. But she would not show it. "We know what we are," Una said quietly. "We have never pretended to be strong. But we have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived wars that killed hundreds of millions. We have survived because we adapt, because we refuse to give up, because we help each other. Pretty words, Volmek said. But words do not change facts. The Council will now vote on humanity's classification. One by one, the 12 species cast their votes. The holograms appeared in the air, marking humanity's place in galactic society. Grade 7. Una did not know what that meant, but she could tell from the fresh wave of laughter that it was not good. Grade 7, Volmek announced. You are granted limited trading rights in the Outer Rim territories. You may not enter the core systems without special permission. You may not possess weapons above Class 2. You will pay tribute to the compact in the form of raw materials from your solar system. Tribute? Una said. We came here as equals, not as servants. You are not equals. Volmek's voice was sharp now. You are barely above animals. Be grateful we recognize you as sentient at all. This audience is over. The doors behind them opened. Una understood the message. They were being dismissed like children sent to bed. She turned and walked out, her crew following in silence. The laughter of the compact echoed behind them until the doors closed. The journey back to Earth took 3 months. 3 months of silence in the ship, 3 months of crew members staring at nothing, 3 months of shame sitting heavy in everyone's chest. When they finally landed in Seoul, the capital of the United Earth Government, Director Tai Wuhan was waiting for them. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes, but those eyes were hard as he listened to Una's report. Also present were Dr. Jisoo Kang, the chief xenobiologist, and General Do-hyun Choi, commander of Earth's defense forces. They sat in the director's office, high above the glowing city, and they listened to the recording from the council chamber. When it finished, there was a long silence. Grade 7, Jisoo said finally. They ranked us below the Vorath, and the Vorath are barely more intelligent than dolphins. They see our short lives as the ultimate weakness, Una said. To them, we are born and we die before they finish their morning meal. We are insects to them. Insects. General Do-hyun stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, millions of lights, millions of lives. Do they know that insects can bring down the mightiest beasts? That a swarm of small creatures can strip flesh from bone? They do not see it that way, Una said. They only see what we cannot do. They do not see what we can. Director Taiwu had been quiet until now. He sat with his fingers pressed together, thinking. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. They have given us the worst territories. The Outer Rim, the places no one else wants. He smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. That means they will not be watching us too closely. Jisoo understood first. Her eyes went wide. You want to prepare. I want to survive, Taiwu said. They think our short lives make us weak. They do not understand that short lives mean fast generations. Fast learning. Fast change. He turned to look out the window at the city below. They have had 50,000 years to grow comfortable. We have had barely 1,000 years of desperation. Let us see which one makes his species stronger. He looked at each of them in turn. We will smile. We will accept their insults. We will pay their tribute and follow their rules. And in the shadows, we will build something they cannot imagine. Because we do not have time to waste. Una felt something shift inside her. The shame was still there, but now it had a sharp edge to it. It had become something else. It had become purpose. How long? She asked. Taiwu shrugged. As long as it takes. 100 years. 200. We are building for our grandchildren now, Admiral. Perhaps our great-grandchildren. They mocked us for dying quickly. They do not realize that this means we pass our knowledge and our fire to the next generation while it still burns hot. He turned away from the window. Let them laugh. One day, they will understand what humanity truly is. And on that day, they will wish they had been kinder. Outside, the stars hung in the darkness like cold and distant judges. Humanity looked up at them, and for the first time, humanity was not dreaming of peace. Humanity was planning. 50 years passed like water through open fingers. Captain Yoonji Shin stood on the bridge of the Soul's Promise, watching the stars drift by on the main screen. She was 42 years old, with gray already showing in her black hair and lines around her eyes from too many years of squinting at distant horizons. The Soul's Promise was an exploration vessel, one of dozens that humanity sent into the Outer Rim. The compact had given them the worst space in the galaxy, the emptiest regions, the places where nothing interesting ever happened. At least, that was what everyone believed. "Captain," said her navigator, a young man named Junho Ma, "we are approaching the coordinates. There is something strange on the sensors." Yoonji walked over to look at his screen. The readings made no sense. There was mass where there should be empty space, heat signatures where there should be cold vacuum, and underneath it all, a faint energy pattern that did not match any known technology. "Take us in closer," she said. Slowly, the ship moved forward, and the view screen filled with something impossible. It was a station, but not like any station Junji had ever seen. It was ancient, covered in dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that looked almost like writing, but in a language that no living species could read. "By the stars," Junho whispered. "What is that?" Yoonji's heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. "That is why we are out here. Prepare a boarding team. I want to see this up close." 3 hours later, Yoonji walked through the silent corridors of the dead station. Her boots made no sound on the strange metal floor. Behind her came Dr. Minho Lee, the ship's xenarchaeologist, a thin man who looked like he had not slept in weeks, even before this discovery. "The construction style does not match any compact species," Minho said, running his fingers along the walls. "This is old. Very old. Maybe older than the compact itself. Is that possible?" asked Lieutenant Boyoung Kim, who led the security team. "The compact has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. The universe has been around for billions," Minho replied. "There is plenty of time for civilizations to rise and fall before anyone remembers them." They found the control room at the center of the station. It was a circular chamber with screens on every wall, all of them dark and dead. In the center stood a single pedestal with something resting on top of it. It was a cube about the size of a human head, made of the same dark metal as the station. When Minho touched it, it began to glow with a soft blue light. "Recording activated," said a voice. It spoke in a language none of them knew, but somehow they understood it anyway. The words seemed to form directly in their minds. "If you are hearing this, then we are dead." The screens around them flickered to life. They showed images, terrible images. Ships burning in the void. Worlds covered in darkness. Creatures that seemed to be made of nothing but hunger and shadow, pouring across star systems like a wave of death. "We called them the Hollow," the voice continued. "We do not know where they came from. We do not know what they want. We only know that they consume. Every 10,000 years, they wake from their sleep between galaxies. They feed on everything with life. And then they sleep again, waiting for the next harvest." Yoonji felt cold. When was the last harvest? As if hearing her question, the recording continued. "We are leaving this warning for whoever comes after us. The last time the Hollow woke, our civilization was young. We barely survived. We built this station to remember, to warn. The cycle is approximately 10,000 years. We pray that whoever finds this message will have time to prepare." The recording ended. The screens went dark. Minho was already doing calculations on his portable device. His face had gone pale. "Captain," he said, "if their dating system is accurate, and if their calculation of the cycle is correct, the last time the hollow appeared was approximately 9,800 years ago." The silence in the room was absolute. 200 years, Yunji said. "We have 200 years until they come back." Minho shook his head. "That is a rough estimate. It could be less. It could be much less." Yunji grabbed the cube from the pedestal. "We need to bring this to the compact. They need to know." The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 months. During that time, Yunji watched the recording again and again, looking for any detail they might have missed. Dr. Minho translated the symbols on the station, finding more warnings, more desperate messages from a dead people. Ambassador Sujin Yu met them at the station. She was an older woman now, having spent 20 years representing humanity to the compact. 20 years of smiling at insults and pretending not to notice the mockery. Her patience had worn thin, but her mind was still sharp. "This is significant," she said after seeing the recording. "If it is real." "It is real," Yunji said. "That station has been there for at least 50,000 years. The compact species did not build it. Someone else did. Someone who is now gone." Sujin nodded slowly. "Then we must present this to the council." The council chamber had not changed in 50 years. The same seats, the same species, the same feeling of giants looking down at insects. High Arbiter Volmek still sat on his crystal throne. He looked exactly the same as he had 50 years ago. For the Velthari, 50 years was nothing. A blink of an eye. "You have requested an emergency session," Volmek said. "This had better be important." Unji stepped forward. "It is. We have discovered evidence of an extinction-level threat to the entire galaxy." She played the recording. The council watched in silence. When it was finished, Yunji waited for their response. Councillor Thrain of the Marathi spoke first. "An interesting artifact. Clearly a fake." "It is not a fake," Minho said. "We have tested the materials. The station is older than any compact technology. Then it is a relic of some primitive species that destroyed itself through superstition and fear." Thrain's voice was dismissive. "They probably imagined this hollow threat as an explanation for some natural disaster." 11 billion dead, Yunji said. "They recorded their own extinction. Does that look imaginary to you?" "What looks imaginary," Volmek said, "is the idea that a threat exists which the compact has never detected. We have watched the spaces between galaxies for 100,000 years. There is nothing there." "With respect," Sujin said carefully, "the species who left this warning were clearly advanced. Perhaps more advanced than the compact. If they could not detect the hollow until it was too late, perhaps the compact cannot either." The laughter came again. That terrible, mocking laughter that Unipark had heard 50 years before. "Human paranoia," Volmek said. "You see extinction everywhere because you live with it every day. Your grandparents are dead. Your parents are dying. Your children will be dust before my breakfast ends. Is it any wonder you imagine the universe as a place of constant death?" "This is not imagination," Unji said. "This is evidence. This is fear." Volmek waved his hand. "We will not waste compact resources chasing ghost stories from a dead species. You are dismissed." Outside the council chamber, Sujin put her hand on Yunji's shoulder. "I know," she said. "I know how it feels." "They are fools," Yunji said. "They will doom us all. Perhaps." Sujin looked back at the closed doors. "But I have been watching them for 20 years. And I have noticed something strange." "What?" "The oldest members of the compact, The ones who might remember the last cycle. The ones who might have records from 10,000 years ago. Sujin's voice dropped to a whisper. They are gone. All of them. Died of natural causes in the past century. Or retired to distant worlds. Or simply disappeared. Yunji stared at her. You think someone is hiding the truth. I think the truth is very expensive, and someone has paid a great price to bury it. Sujin turned away. Come, we must report back to Earth. If the compact will not prepare, humanity will. As they walked to their ship, neither of them noticed the dark figure watching from the shadows. A Velthari, but not one from the council. This one wore no crystals, no ornaments. He watched the humans leave, and then he turned and disappeared into the station. In a hidden room, he opened a communication channel. The humans have found the warning, he said. The council rejected them, as planned. Good. The voice on the other end was cold and very old. Let them laugh. The hollow comes regardless. And when it does, we will be far away, watching the galaxy burn. What about the humans? A pause. They are insects. They will die with the rest. The channel closed. The figure sat alone in the darkness, wondering if the ancient plan would truly work. Wondering if anyone could survive what was coming. Outside, the stars continued their endless dance, indifferent to the small creatures who lived and died in their light. Somewhere in the vast emptiness between galaxies, something stirred in its long sleep. The harvest was coming, and the galaxy was not ready. The hollow arrived on a Tuesday. On the Dren homeworld of Korath Prime, it was the middle of summer. Children played in the parks. Workers went to their jobs. 11 billion people lived their ordinary lives, not knowing that they were about to become a memory. The first sign was the darkness. A shadow fell across the sun, growing larger and larger until the entire sky turned black. People looked up and saw something that their minds could not understand. It was a wave of shapes that seemed to shift and change, never staying still long enough to be seen clearly. They poured through the atmosphere like water through a broken dam. Millions of them, billions of them, so many that they blotted out the light itself. The Dren were a proud warrior species. Their bodies were built for battle, their bones reinforced with natural metal, their skin thick as armor. They had not lost a war in 30,000 years. The war lasted 6 hours. The hollow did not fight. Fighting implies an opponent, a contest, a chance of victory. The hollow simply consumed. They touched living things, and those living things stopped being alive. Not dead, exactly. Just gone. Dissolved into raw material that the hollow absorbed and used to make more of themselves. By sunset, there was no one left to see it. Across the galaxy, panic spread faster than light. The compact's emergency networks lit up with desperate messages. The Velthari mobilized their great fleet, the largest military force in known space. Thousands of crystalline ships, each one ancient and powerful, gathered at the Crimson Nebula to stop the Hollow's advance. High Arbiter Volmek himself watched the battle from his flagship. We are the Compact, he broadcast to his fleet. We have ruled this galaxy for 100,000 years. No threat has ever defeated us. Today will be no different. The battle began with the Velthari firing every weapon they had. Plasma cannons that could crack planets. Particle beams that moved at the speed of light. Missiles carrying enough explosive power to destroy small moons. The hollow absorbed everything. They did not dodge. They did not shield. They simply took the energy of every weapon fired at them and used it to grow stronger. Within minutes, they had adapted. The plasma no longer burned them. The particles passed through them without effect. The missiles were caught and broken down before they could explode. Then the hollow attacked. Volmek watched his ships die. Great vessels that had protected the galaxy for millennia were torn apart in seconds. Crews that had served for centuries were consumed before they could scream. The Hollow moved through the fleet like fire through dry grass, leaving nothing but silence and emptiness behind. In 3 hours, the greatest military force in galactic history was gone. Volmek escaped in a small shuttle, one of only a handful of survivors. As he fled, he did something he had never done before. He opened a communication channel to Earth. "Help us," he said. "Please." Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo Baek received the message aboard the Eternal Dawn. He was 63 years old, born 3 years after humanity first joined the Compact. He had never known a galaxy where humans were not mocked and dismissed. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "Play it again," he said. The message repeated. Volmek's voice, so different from the cold mockery of 50 years ago. Now there was only fear. Commander Nari O stood beside him, studying the tactical display. "The Hollow has consumed 4 worlds since Karth Prime. They are moving toward the core systems. How long until they reach Earth?" "At current speed, approximately 3 months." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "And our fleet?" "Ready, Admiral." Chief Engineer Junsu Im pulled up the display showing humanity's hidden forces. 10,000 ships, all built in secret over the past 50 years. Armed with weapons no one has ever seen. 10,000 ships. Tactical Officer Yujin Kwan shook her head. The Valkyrie had 50,000. It meant nothing. The Valkyrie had 50,000 ships built to last forever, Hyunwoo said. "We have 10,000 ships built to win today. There's a difference." He turned to face his officers. They were young, most of them. Human generations moved quickly. The admirals and generals who had started this project were long dead. But they had passed their knowledge down, refined it, improved it with each generation. That was what the Compact never understood. Humans did not live long, but they lived fast. Each generation learned from the last and built something better. In 50 years, humanity had gone through nearly 3 generations of scientists, engineers, and soldiers. Each one had added their part to the great project. The Compact had spent 50 years doing exactly what they had always done. Humanity had spent 50 years changing. "Launch the fleet," Hyunwoo ordered. "All ships. It is time for the galaxy to see what we have built." The human fleet emerged from hidden bases throughout the outer rim. They were not beautiful ships. They were not elegant or ancient or impressive. They were ugly, practical, and deadly. Every ship was designed to be expendable. Every weapon was designed to be improved with each battle. Every crew knew they might not survive, and they had made peace with that knowledge long ago. This was what made humans different. The other species feared death because they had so much time to lose. Humans had made death their partner, their teacher, their motivation. The first engagement happened near the Marathi system. A small human task force of 50 ships met a hollow swarm of 10,000. Captain Dong Ho Yun commanded the task force from his ship, the Burning Rose. He was 31 years old. He had known about the Hollow since he was a child. His entire life had been preparation for this moment. "Remember your training," he broadcast to his fleet. "We are not here to win. We are here to learn." The Hollow attacked, as they always did, overwhelming and consuming. But the human ships did not fight like the Valkyrie. They did not try to destroy the Hollow directly. Instead, they studied. Every sensor on every ship recorded everything. The way the Hollow moved, the way they adapted, the patterns in their behavior. Data flowed back to the main fleet in real time, analyzed by artificial minds and human researchers working together. 37 ships died in the first 10 minutes. Their crews transmitted their findings until the moment of their death. They adapt to energy weapons in 4.3 seconds. one dying captain reported. Try kinetic projectiles. The remaining ships switched to solid ammunition. For 11 seconds, it worked. The Hollow died by the thousands. Then they adapted again. Physical projectiles neutralized. Try combination attacks. Another 10 ships died testing combination strategies. By the end of the battle, only 3 ships remained. Dongho's Burning Rose was one of them. They retreated, carrying data that was worth more than gold, more than planets, more than stars. 47 ships lost, Nari reported back on the Eternal Dawn. Over 2,000 crew. And what did we learn? Hyunwoo asked. Dr. Jisoo Kang, now 93 years old and more brilliant than ever, appeared on the screen from her research station on Mars. We learned everything, Admiral. The Hollow adapts to any single threat within seconds. But they cannot adapt to what they cannot predict. They are a machine, following patterns. If we can find those patterns, we can break them. How long will that take? I do not know. But we will not stop until we find the answer. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. 47 ships. 2,000 lives. The first payment in a war that would cost millions more. But they had learned. They had grown. They had become more dangerous. Send the data to all research teams, he ordered. And prepare the next task force. We hit them again tomorrow. Admiral, Eugen said quietly. At this rate, we will run out of ships and crews in months. I know. Hyunwoo opened his eyes. But we will run out of ignorance first. And that is how we will win. Across the galaxy, the Hollow continued their advance. World after world fell. Species that had lived for millions of years were erased in hours. The compact crumbled, its ancient structure unable to handle a threat that moved faster than bureaucracy. But in the darkness, small points of light still burned. Human ships, human crews, human stubborn refusal to accept the end. They mocked humanity's weakness. They called humans fragile, temporary, insignificant. Now the galaxy was burning. And the only ones still fighting were the insects they had dismissed. The war for survival had begun. The war had lasted 5 years. Sergeant Hajin Rue lay in the mud of a dying world, her rifle pressed against her shoulder, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Around her, the remains of her squad were scattered like broken toys. Private Wanjun Seo was gone. Corporal Menji Wang was gone. All 12 of them gone. Only Hajin remained. The world was called Velter's Hope, a Velteri colony that had once been home to 3 million people. Now it was gray and silent, its cities turned to dust, its forests consumed. The Hollow had passed through here 2 weeks ago, but small groups of them still wandered the surface, searching for anything they might have missed. Hajin was supposed to hold this position for 6 hours. Help would arrive then. A rescue ship would come, pick up the survivors, and take them to safety. That was 3 days ago. Her radio was broken. Her food was gone. Her water had run out yesterday morning. A hollow fragment had cut her leg, and the wound was infected, sending red lines of poison up toward her heart. She could give up. She could close her eyes and let the darkness take her. No one would blame her. No one would even know. But every time she considered it, she heard her grandmother's voice. Her grandmother had survived the soul famine of 2789, when the crops failed and half the city starved. She had told Hajin stories about eating tree bark and leather shoes, about watching friends die and still getting up each morning. "Why did you keep going?" young Hajin had asked. Her grandmother had smiled, her face wrinkled like old paper. "Because tomorrow might be better. And if it is not, we make it better ourselves." Hajin raised her rifle as a hollow shape appeared on the ridge. She fired 3 times. 2 shots missed. 1 hit, and the creature dissolved into gray mist. "Come on then," she whispered. I am still here." When the rescue ship finally arrived on the 6th day, they found Hajin unconscious but alive. Around her position lay the remains of 47 hollow fragments, each one marked by precise bullet holes or knife wounds or, in a few cases, what appeared to be teeth marks. The Velthari medic who treated her could not believe what he was seeing. "Your body should have failed days ago," he said. "The infection alone should have killed you. How are you still alive?" Hajin opened her eyes. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her words were clear. "Because tomorrow might be better." Stories like Hajin spread through the fleet. Humans who should have died but refused. Crews who fought until their ships were nothing but burning wreckage, then climbed into escape pods and kept fighting. Scientists who worked for days without sleep, their bodies failing but their minds still sharp, still searching for answers. The other species watched in confusion. They did not understand. On the refugee station of Haven's Rest, a Velthari survivor named Valora approached a human soldier named Corporal Sun Wujiang. She had lost her entire family to the Hollow. Her crystalline body was cracked and dull, her light nearly extinguished. "Why do you still fight?" she asked. "You know you cannot win. Your ships are destroyed faster than you can build them. Your people die by the millions. The mathematics are simple. You will run out of humans before the Hollow runs out of hunger." Sunwoo considered the question. He was 24 years old. His parents were dead. His sister was dead. His home city was ash. "Do you know how old my grandmother lived to be?" he asked. Valora shook her head. 87 years. That is nothing to your kind. A blink, a moment. But in those 87 years, she raised 4 children, taught hundreds of students, wrote 3 books, and saw her great-grandchildren born. He paused. She knew she was dying the whole time. Every day, she knew. And she lived anyway. She laughed anyway. She loved anyway. He looked up at the stars visible through the station's window. "We have always been dying. From the moment we are born, we know our time is short. So we learn to fill that time with meaning. We learn that a life does not have to be long to be important. We learn to burn bright because we cannot burn long." Valora did not understand, not really. But something in his words stirred something in her dying heart. "Burn bright," she repeated. "Yes," Sunwoo smiled. "And if we must burn out, we will take as many of them with us as we can." Dr. Jisoo Kang was 96 years old. Her body was failing. Her hands shook. Her eyes needed artificial help to see. But her mind was still the sharpest weapon humanity possessed. For 5 years, she had studied the Hollow. Millions of data points from thousands of battles. Samples collected at the cost of hundreds of lives. Patterns analyzed by the most advanced artificial minds ever created. And finally, she had found the answer. "They are not alive," she announced to the emergency council, her voice weak but steady. "Not in any meaningful sense. They are machines, weapons, built by a civilization so ancient that even the Compact has forgotten them." Admiral Hyun-woo Beek leaned forward. "Built for what purpose?" "Population control." Jisoo brought up a holographic display showing the Hollow's structure at the molecular level. Every 10,000 years, they wake and consume any species that has grown too large, too powerful. Then they return to sleep, waiting for the next cycle. "A reset button for the galaxy," Nario said quietly. "Exactly. But here is the important part. They are running on programming that is millions of years old. Corrupted, fragmenting. They still follow their original purpose, but their instructions are degraded, full of errors." Jisoo smiled, and in that smile was the fire of a woman who had spent her entire life learning and growing and changing. And like all programs, they can be hacked. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. The Hollow had a central node, a controlling intelligence that coordinated all the fragments. It hid in the spaces between galaxies, protected by millions of guardian fragments. If they could reach it, if they could deliver a specially designed virus directly to its core, the Hollow would shut down. But reaching it meant a journey that no ship could survive. The central node was surrounded by gravity wells and radiation that would tear any vessel apart. The only way in was through a narrow passage, constantly shifting, barely wide enough for a small shuttle. A one-way trip. Specialist Dongwook Lim volunteered before anyone else could speak. He was 23 years old, a cyber warfare expert who had been born after the war started. He had never known peace, only preparation. His entire existence had been aimed at this moment. His mother was Admiral Yoonji Shin, now 73, and still commanding her own fleet. She had found the warning. She had started all of this. Now she had to watch her son volunteer to die. There must be another way, she said, though she knew there was not. Dongwook took her hands. They were small hands, young hands, with so many years of work they would never do. I have maybe 60 more years anyway, he said. Let me spend them all at once, for something that matters. Yoonji looked at her son. She saw his father in him, dead these 10 years from a hollow attack. She saw herself, young and fierce and determined. She saw humanity, brief and bright and burning. I am proud of you, she said. I have always been proud of you. I know, Mother. He smiled. I have always known. The mission launched 3 days later. Dongwook's shuttle, the final word, was barely larger than a ground car. It carried no weapons, no shields, nothing except the virus and the young man who would deliver it. Humanity's entire fleet provided cover. 10,000 ships, now reduced to 3,000, threw themselves at the Hollow Guardians. They did not fight to win. They fought to distract, to create a single narrow window of opportunity. Ships died by the dozens. Crews transmitted their final messages and then vanished into silence. The stars themselves seemed to weep at the carnage. And through it all, the final word flew. Dongwook watched his display as the passage to the central node opened before him. Gravity was crushing his shuttle. Radiation was cooking his body. He had minutes to live, maybe less. But he was smiling. Final word to fleet, he transmitted. I am through. Beginning upload now. On the flagship, Yoonji listened to her son's voice, knowing they were the last words she would ever hear him speak. Upload at 30%. Hollow Guardians are converging on my position. I will hold them as long as I can. 50%, 60, 70. They are breaking through the hull. I can feel them. They are in my mind now, trying to stop the upload. But I am thinking about tomorrow. About all the tomorrows I am buying with this moment. 80%, 90. Tell everyone I was not afraid. Tell them I was proud to be human. Tell them the transmission cut off. On the display, the final word signal vanished. For a terrible moment, there was only silence. Then, across the galaxy, every hollow fragment stopped moving. Their eyes went dark. Their forms collapsed. Billions of them, trillions of them, falling like leaves in autumn, crumbling into gray dust that scattered on solar winds. The upload was complete. The hollow was dead. Yoonji closed her eyes and wept. For her son. For the millions who had died. For the galaxy that would never know the name of the young man who had saved it. But she wept with pride, too. Because in the end, humanity had proven something that no one else could understand. It was not about how long you lived. It was about how brightly you burned. The silence was the hardest part. Admiral Yoonji Shin stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the gray dust drift past the windows. It had been 3 days since the hollow died. 3 days since her son had given his life. 3 days of silence where there should have been celebration. Around her, the survivors of humanity's fleet gathered their dead and counted their losses. 3 billion humans had died in the 5 years of war. Cities that had stood for centuries were gone. Families that had stretched back generations were ended. But humanity still lived. New children were being born, even now, crying their first cries on ships and stations across the outer rim. New families were forming. New stories were beginning. That was the human way. They had never stopped. Not even in the darkest moments of the war. They had kept living, kept loving, kept building. The compact species did not understand this. How could a species that lost so much still have hope? How could creatures who lived such brief lives still look forward to tomorrow? High Arbiter Volmek came to the human flagship 1 week after the war ended. His crystalline body was cracked and dark, his light almost gone. The Valkyrie had lost their homeworld, their fleet, and 80% of their population. The proud rulers of the galaxy were now refugees. Ambassador Sujin Yu met him at the docking bay. She was 73 now, her hair silver and her face lined with years of struggle. But her eyes were still sharp, still watching. "Hi, Arbiter," she said. "You are welcome aboard." Volmek looked around the ship. It was old, patched together from salvaged parts and held together by determination as much as engineering. Nothing like the elegant crystalline vessels of the Valkyrie. "How do you do it?" he asked. His voice was quiet, broken. "How do you keep going? We have lived for millennia, and we are shattered by this loss. You have lived for decades, lost so much more in proportion, and you are already rebuilding." Sujin considered the question. Behind her, human crew members moved through the corridors, working, talking, laughing. They had lost friends and family. They were grieving, but they were also living. "When my mother was dying," Sujin said, "I asked her if she was afraid. She said no. She said she had packed more life into her 70 years than many would fit into 1,000. She said that a life is not measured in years, but in moments." She paused. "We have always known we would die young. So we learn to make each moment count. When we lose, we grieve. Then we get up and make new moments, new memories, new reasons to keep going." Volmek was silent for a long time. Then he bowed his head, a gesture of respect that no Valkyrie had ever shown a human. "We were wrong," he said. "We called you weak, but we were the weak ones. We were so comfortable in our long lives that we forgot how to fight for survival. You never had that luxury. You were always fighting, always struggling, always climbing. And that made you stronger than we could ever be." The reformed Galactic Council met on a station built from the wreckage of the old Nexus Prime. Only 7 species remained of the original 12. The Dren were nearly extinct. Fewer than 10,000 survivors scattered across a handful of refugee ships. The others had lost worlds, populations, histories. But they had also gained something: understanding. When Sujin entered the council chamber, the other representatives stood. Not in mockery, as they had done 55 years ago when Unipark first came before them. This time, they stood in respect. Volmek spoke first. "Humanity has proven itself beyond any doubt. You saved us when we had abandoned hope. You fought when we could not. You sacrificed everything, and you never asked for anything in return." He paused, gathering himself. "On behalf of the Galactic Compact, I offer humanity the highest honor we can give. Species Grade 1 with full voting rights and equal leadership of the Compact." The other representatives nodded their agreement. The Moradi, who had once mocked humanity's short lives, bowed their serpentine heads. The remaining Valkyrie dimmed their lights in a sign of submission. Even the Dren survivors, their stone faces cracked and weathered, lowered their eyes in acknowledgement. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo Baek stood beside Sujin. He had led humanity through the war, had ordered the attacks that cost so many lives, had watched Dongwook's final transmission with tears in his eyes. He was the hero of humanity, the savior of the galaxy. And he shook his head. "No," he said. The chamber went silent. "We do not want to rule you," Hyunwoo continued. "We never did. We did not fight for power or position. We fought because it was the right thing to do. Because everyone deserves a tomorrow." He looked around the chamber at the surviving species, once so proud and now so broken. "You do not need rulers now. You need partners, friends. You need to learn what we have always known, that survival is not about strength or long life or advanced technology. It is about getting up each morning and choosing to try again." He turned to Sujin, who nodded and stepped forward. "Humanity accepts your offer of equal partnership," she said. "Not leadership, not rulership, partnership. We will help you rebuild. We will share our knowledge and our spirit. And together, we will make sure that the Hollow, or anything like it, never threatens this galaxy again." Volmax stared at them for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to the ground, bending his crystalline body in a gesture that the Velthari had not performed in 10,000 years. He kneeled. One by one, every representative in the chamber followed. The Moradi curled their bodies low. The Dren bent their stone knees. The others bowed in whatever way their species showed submission. Hyunwoo looked at them, these ancient beings who had once looked down on humanity as insects. He did not feel pride or satisfaction. He felt only sadness and hope. "Stand up," he said gently. "We bow no one, and we do not ask anyone to bow to us. We walk together, or not at all." Slowly, the representatives rose. And for the first time in the history of the galaxy, they looked at humans not as inferiors, not as superiors, but as equals. 100 years later, the galaxy had healed. New cities rose on rebuilt worlds. New species emerged from isolated corners of space, cautiously joining the reformed compact. The scars of the Hollow War remained, but they had become monuments, reminders of what had been lost and what had been saved. On the memorial world of Karth Prime, a museum stood where the Dren capital had once risen. It was a simple building, not grand or impressive, but it held the stories of every species that had fought and died in the war. At its center stood a statue of a young human man, frozen forever at 23, his arms raised toward the stars. A young human woman named Soin Moon guided a group of children through the museum. The children were from many species, mixed together in ways that would have been impossible a century ago. Velthari crystals sparkled beside Moradi scales. Human children held hands with the granddaughters of Dren survivors. "Who is that?" asked a young Moradi girl, pointing at the statue. Soin smiled. "That is Dongwook Lim. He saved the galaxy." "How?" "He gave everything he had. His whole life, all at once, to stop the Hollow." He was 23 years old. The children looked at the statue with wide eyes. 23 years was nothing to most of them. The Moradi girl would not even be considered an adult until she was 100. "Was he afraid?" Another child asked, this one a small Velthari, whose crystals had not yet formed their adult colors. Soyan knelt to look the child in the eyes. "I think he was. Being brave does not mean you are not afraid. It means you do what needs to be done anyway." "Why did the humans fight so hard?" the Moradi girl asked. "My grandmother says they are weak, that they die quickly and break easily." Soyan felt a flash of old pain at those words, but she pushed it aside. The galaxy was still learning. Some lessons took time. "We are weak," she said simply. "Our bodies break. Our lives are short. But that is why we fight. because we know what it is to lose. We know what it is to struggle, to suffer, to face death every day. And we know that giving up means losing everything. She stood and looked up at Dongwook's statue, his face forever young, forever brave. They mocked us for dying, she said. They never understood that dying well is how we learn to live. The children were quiet, thinking about her words. Outside the museum, ships from 100 worlds passed through the sky. Their crews were mixed, humans working alongside Velthari Moradi trading with Dren survivors. The galaxy was not perfect. It never would be. But it was alive, and it was moving forward. Soyeon led the children toward the exit, toward the bright day outside. "Come on," she said. "Tomorrow is waiting." And as they walked out into the light, the statue of Dongwook Lim seemed to smile. His bronze face turned toward the stars he had died to protect. The galaxy still burned. But now, it burned with light. And in the hearts of every species that had learned the lesson of the Hollow War, a small fire had been kindled. The fire of stubborn hope. The fire of refusal to give up. The fire that humanity had carried through their brief, brilliant existence. The fire that would never go out. Because tomorrow might be better. And if it was not, they would make it better themselves. The end.